Hello and welcome to the Graveyard for another interview. I'm here with the head of the Seattle chapter of the Horror Writers Association, Brianna Malotke. Welcome. How are you?
Good.
Good. Well, thank you for joining us today. We have you on to talk about
Seattle Scares.
Yes.
So it's a mini segment. We have such a variety of horror writers in our chapter that I really wanted to showcase the different talents we have. And this seemed like the perfect opportunity to kind of get some of the lesser known work out there. And so Seattle Scares is a little bit inspired by the Twilight Zone and kind of like what you think of your classic campfire ghost stories where you're sitting around and you're just swapping stories at camp. And so each segment is an author reading a flash fiction piece, so something that's 1,000 words or less. And so they're all set in the Pacific Northwest, and they're all creepy in their own way.
Yeah. Can you tell us more about the Horror Writers Association and what it is on a national and local level?
Yeah, so the Horror Writers Association is the world's largest horror organization. So it is global. There's chapters all across the world. It is for writers, but it's, anyone involved in the world of writing. So there's screenplay writers, there's novelists, there's agents, all the different levels within the world of writing. And it has a bunch of different opportunities. There's the StokerCon, which is the annual horror convention, panels, workshops, the Bram Stoker Awards, of course.
Yeah.
And then they have the First Film Fest, I think is what it's called. But there's a lot of writing opportunities. And so locally, the Seattle chapter, we are relatively new. We're a baby chapter. We're about a year old, and so I moved here about 2 years ago, and I moved from the Chicago area, and so I was really involved in the Chicago chapter, and when I moved out here, I was a little disappointed there wasn't that already community established, and so I got the Seattle chapter started, and we've just been busy ever since. We meet every other month, and it kind of gives writers in the area that sense of community, people you can swap stories with, you can ask for critiques, you can just go to horror movies together. We're doing that now.
Fantastic.
But yeah, we do a lot of events too. So we had Spring Scares at Barnes & Noble in Kirkland, where we had about 12 horror authors, and we did round robin panels every hour on the hour. We were at Crypticon right next to you guys. So, yeah, just a lot of different things, trying to create as many opportunities for engagement in and near Seattle as we can.
Yeah. And how did you get involved in writing? What was your start?
Yeah, so I guess I'm very much like a lot of people out there. I started writing in high school, really loved it. My background is in costume design, actually, and so I was really more into that aspect of everything, and it wasn't until kind of COVID happened and all of my plays and projects got shut down that I was like, oh, what else am I gonna do? And so I really got back into writing and started to seek publication at that point, and so kind of switched gears.
And you are a published author. What can people find from you out there? What projects have you gotten published that folks can access?
Yeah, so I actually have over 90 publications, all in different anthologies, magazines, all of that. But as far as standalone projects, I have a horror poetry collection called Fashion Trends, Deadly Ends. And so it's that perfect blend of costume design, fashion history, and body horror. And so it takes you head to toe from the different grisly fashion trends, all the way back to, I think, like the 1600s. And so you get a little image, maybe a silhouette, or a nice illustration, some research, and then some terrifying poetry.
Yeah. And you actually helped figure out some of the fashion for our segment, The Pale Parade, the histories of Halloween.
Yeah, a little bit of consulting, some research.
Yeah, so very much appreciate that. Why is horror the medium you choose to tell stories in?
Yeah, so it's one of those things, I feel like horror and being scared is a very universal feeling. And so while it might not be your nightmare, it still just makes you think a little bit more. And so I really enjoy that aspect of horror. And I like, leaving things maybe unsaid, a little bit of mystery. And so it's just the most fun I've found so far, trying to write fiction, or I write romance as well. And horror is just that sweet spot. It's the most fun.
Do you have a favorite horror story recommendation that people should be reading? I usually ask people movie, but you could answer that too. Do you have a favorite horror movie?
I mean, I have a couple favorite horror movies. One is The Others. Mm-hmm. That's just one of those films, like you watch it for the first time and that kind of feeling, you're like, oh, I love that. The 90s Dracula movie with Gary Oldman is my favorite. I know some people are like, it's not horror, but it kind of is. Gorgeous costuming, of course.
Yep, absolutely.
But that's probably, Dracula's my favorite book, and a little cliche, right, as a horror writer. But it's
a very unique book. Yeah, being told in that epistolary style and like having the letters go back and forth is a very unique way to tell a story. The only other one that really jumps to mind is Stephen King's Carrie, which is told in the newspaper clippings.
Right.
So it has a unique device as well as being an interesting story.
Yeah,
so.
And I always say if you're wanting to get into horror, pick up an anthology, something that has 20, 30 authors in it. Because you're going to find somebody you like, and you're going to be able to go further into horror that way. And so that's always my, gateway.
So what's your favorite anthology? Which one should people pick up right now?
I really like the Horoscope volumes. There's 4 of them. There's poetry. It's inspired by zodiac symbols and the traits.
Ooh.
And each zodiac has 1 poem and 2 short stories. Mm-hmm. So you get a mix of poetry, you get a mix of short stories, and they're all different. So it's like 36 authors. And I believe an author could only be in 2. So you're not getting the same voices in all 4 volumes.
Wow. That sounds fantastic. I'll have to check that.
Yeah, it's just like a massive amount of horror.
Yeah. And this is a Halloween TV special. Do you have any traditions that you go, or rituals that you perform every Halloween? What about the holiday is exciting for you?
I do, actually. So I am from the Midwest, and pretty much since college, I've never lived in the same state as my family. And so one of the things that my mom and I do every October is we send each other what we call spooky boxes. And so it's just like a giant box full of Halloween-oriented things. Mm-hmm. So it's like kitchen decor, it's the Count Chocula cereal, scary movies, just a crazy amount of stuff. She sent this past year, I got a book of scary stories set in Ohio. So, so every October, I'm like, okay.
Was it just the newspaper?
No. Right?
What can people be on the lookout for from you?
Yeah, so my most recent horror poetry collection called Lost Cherry was just published with January Ember Press this past August. And so you can find it online at Barnes & Noble and a bunch of local bookstores near the Seattle area.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Brianna.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I will give you the handshake goodbye. We'll talk again soon.
Yes, thank you.